Welcome to the Sherdog Radio recap for UFC Fight Night 242, Burns versus Brady, also known as UFC Vegas 97. Do not adjust your screens. I am your host for the evening, Ben Duffy. With me is not Keith Schillen, who decided to go camping this weekend, but instead the newest member of the Sherdog team here, Mr. Dayne Fox, longtime fixture at Bloody Elbow. Now he's all ours. Dayne, unmute your mic and say hello to the folks.
More than happy to be here. Been following along with yourself and Keith as long as you guys have been here, and well, Keith even before that point because he's been doing this for a long time himself. But more than honored to be here. Appreciate the warm welcome, Ben.
Hey, it's good to have you, and let's get right to it. UFC Vegas 97 capped by a high level welterweight contenders fight between longtime contender and one-time title challenger Gilbert Burns and the fast rising Sean Brady, still kind of trying to put his lone career loss in the rear view. He was the favorite coming into tonight's fight. I and a pretty big minority of fans and media people went with Burns for the upset. That was not the case. Brady wins the unanimous decision. I took a little sneak peek cheat look at MMA-decisions.com. I saw that you scored at 49-46 for Brady. I scored at 50-45 for Brady. Which round did you give to Gilbert Burns?
I gave him the third round. I thought at that point he had some big moments. But at the same time, I'll be the first to admit that if somebody wanted to give that to Brady, I'm not going to fault him.
No,
Because
you're giving me you're making my point for me, and all of you in the chat, thank you so much for your patience. We had to iron out a few sound issues that I made Dayne feel bad about, but turned out were probably my fault. So, but anyway, drop in the chat how you scored this fight. No, the reason I asked you what round you scored or which round you scored for Burns is that this was an extremely competitive fight for a fight that the majority of judges and the majority of media scored 50-45 for Brady. And I was going to say that I scored all 5 rounds for Brady, but I could easily have seen giving 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2, or 4 to Burns. So when you gave round 3 to Burns, that kind of makes my point for me, where not all 50-45 fights are created equal. This was extremely competitive from one round to the next. Was there anything that surprised you or stood out from either fighter's performance?
I was a little bit surprised to see Brady end the fight as strong as he did. This is the first time that he's gone 5 rounds like that. He showed some cardio issues against Bilal, but at the same time, that's Bilal's game. You're not going to out cardio Bilal. So I expected him to perform better than he did against Bilal, but ultimately, I expected him to be a little bit more fatigued down the stretch. But no, he was still strong. He was still scoring takedowns in the 5th round, and looked better than ever. If we're being honest, like he seemed to take the lessons from the loss to Muhammad well, and he's coming back strong.
I could not agree more. Like, obviously, he probably Brady. There isn't a worse matchup for Brady than Bilal Muhammad. Like, just Bilal, a great wrestler, an absolute cardio machine. You know, maybe the premier fighter in the UFC in terms of weaponized cardio right now. Like, you can argue for Marab, you can argue for a few other people, but he's in the team picture. I'm with you. If you are a Sean Brady booster, or you're someone who is just an impartial observer and you're trying to figure out how far he can go, the obvious question mark is his cardio. And even before the loss to Bilal, and I actually, I picked Bilal to beat him because I thought that's how it was going to go. But even before then, Brady is such an outstanding wrestler, an outstanding top position grappler, but you could tell, like, on his way up, even as he's blowing through people in 1 round, 2 rounds, or he's getting completely dominant 3-round decisions, he's one of those guys that he seemed to be burning a good amount of energy even while winning and even while dominating. Having a wrestling heavy style can come back and bite you if you're getting tired more quickly than your opponent. But he seems to be putting that in the rear view. As you pointed out, 5-round fight against a proven 5-round fighter in Burns. And if anything, he came on strong towards the end, got a couple of emphatic takedowns in round 5. Somebody commented this. I can't remember whether it was the booth or just somebody on Twitter that the UFC put up on screen, but I liked what they said, that Sean Brady is such a good wrestler and such a good grappler that it's easy to lose sight of his striking. His striking is good and has just sort of been quietly continuing to improve and be refined over the course of his UFC run. Like any thoughts about that, and agreement, disagreement?
Well, for his style of fight, it works perfect. He's not swinging the haymakers that Burns was looking for throughout the contest. He's just kind of touching them here, touching them there, and every now and then he threw the power shot in there, but he was very judicious with it. But at the same time, he was also very accurate with it. Like, I remember a body shot in particular that he nailed Burns with late in the fight. It was a kick, if I'm being more specific, but he was very particular about when he decided he wanted to lay it on. He lived up to the expectations that we have of him, in the sense that a lot of us saw Brady as not a uber athlete, but smart fighter. You're not going to outwork him, and just everything really seemed to come together. Like, he's one of those. We've been comparing him to the likes of the crop of younger welterweights coming up. There's Machado Gary, Shavkat, Jack Della Maddalena, and you could add Michael Morales probably at this point. But out of all of those, I would say he's probably the least blessed in terms of pure physical skills. But he's also showing that he's not going to be denied in the sense that that's not going to stop him. He's outsmarting his opponents. Like, I have to say his game plan was better than Burns by far, and I think that's what ultimately did it in for him in this one, at least.
I agree with you. Had a good game plan, stuck to it really well, made the few small adjustments that needed to be made between rounds. And this isn't me necessarily putting Killcliff on blast, because I think they're an outstanding camp, but it almost felt to me as though the game plan was just go out, be Gilbert Burns, and wait for Brady to get tired. And when he didn't, there wasn't much of a plan B.
Yeah, it's almost like they maybe they ascribed to the idea of can't teach an old dog new tricks, because Burns is 38 at this point. I don't know how much more they can add to him at this point, but without overwhelming him, so to speak.
Speaking of being 38, how much of this do you attribute to Burns just aging, having all that attrition? I mean, we're talking about somebody in Burns that he's had an extensive MMA career. This was his 30th professional fight. And then on top of that, he had a whole career as a grappler. I mean, we're talking about a 3-time Mundials champ, an Abu Dhabi medalist. Even if that overlapped a little bit with the beginning of his MMA career, we've got a guy that's been doing combat sports for well over half his life. How much of this do you attribute to Burns starting to fall off, or would Brady have beaten just about any version of Burns tonight? Like, what's your feeling there?
I don't think he would have beaten any version of Burns. There does seem to be he doesn't have the same burst that he had even just a couple of years ago. Like, the Burns that was in there with Kamaru Usman, I think he would have beaten Sean Brady tonight. And that's not a knock on Brady. That's just how good that I believe that Burns was at that point, because he was this close to beating Usman in that fight too.
Yeah,
so it's age is definitely a big part of it tonight, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Nonetheless, at 38, he is still, I mean, he's still capable of picking up scalps in one of the deepest divisions in the sport. He's still capable of giving a guy in Brady that now looks like a future top 5 contender a good run for his money. What do you do with him next? Let's matchmake these guys.
Burns or Brady first?
Let's do Burns first. He's now lost 3 in a row, but none of them have been horrible losses, and none of them have been to bad fighters at all. What do you do with the guy next?
I like Michael Page. Page is a name that's there. He's still got name value, and I think that he would pose an interesting stylistic challenge for Burns. I mean, there's advantages for Page in terms of speed and range. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, if Burns gets the fight to the mat, I don't think Page. I think he can sub Page. So I think it's a fun stylistic fight.
I'm in report. Great minds thinking alike. Posted that just as you said it. And considering there's like a 5 or 10 second delay, it means you guys came up with the idea at the exact same time. I like that just fine. I like that better than what I put down for myself, which was Nicholas Dalby, a guy that it's been a fun story, but he himself is pushing towards 40. And while every win he gets in the UFC gives me joy personally, he's not a future contender at this point. So I thought, great, slap him together, fun fight. But I like MVP just as well. And MVP is in the same bucket. He is 37 or 38. And like, if he was going to make a run at welterweight in the UFC, he was going to have to catch lightning in a bottle, get the right matchups, win 3 quick fights in a row, and say some outrageous shit on the mic. Since that's not happening, Burns and MVP sounds like a hell of a fun fight to me. What do you do with Brady?
So he called out Machado Gary, and I definitely wouldn't be opposed to that. I do think that would be a fun fight, but I kind of like the idea of a theme going on. You know, the UFC has a bunch of the old guard welterweights that they don't have anything planned for them right now. You've got Leon Kamaru and Colby Covington, and then you've got Shavkat. I say he fights for the title. But after Shavkat, you've got Brady, you've got Della Maddalena, and oh god, my mind's slipping
Morales.
right now.
Morales,
no,
yeah,
it's not Morales that I'm thinking of. It's Della Maddalena, Brady, and son of a. Maybe the chat can help us because I'm sure they're
Carlos
smarter than I am.
Prates is on a hell of a run right now.
Prates is. Anyway, I did have Brady down to fight Covington, just because I believe that would be the most interesting fight. Brady proved that he's got a gas tank. Covington typically does too, but he's been falling off with regards to that as of late. But then again, when you fight only once in the last 2.5 years, that's kind of bound to happen. But Brady, Della Maddalena, and Gary, that's right. So anyway, my thoughts with regards to that were. I would match Gary up with Leon Edwards. That one just seems like this fight for me out of any of those matchups. 2 long, lanky strikers. Match up Brady with Covington and then give Usman to Della Maddalena. And we'll see if the changing of the guard occurs.
That worked for me. I had him down for the winner of the Joaquin Buckley versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight coming soon. I'm kind of operating on the assumption that Buckley's going to win that one, that he's not going to do a weird Joaquin Buckley lays an egg type performance, because I think I kind of filed Buckley away as a guy that was never going to be a real contender, but was just going to provide insane highlights for however long he sticks around. But all of a sudden he's won 4 fights in a row, and he's won fights where he didn't get the kill shot. That to me sounds like a guy that deserves a shot at a top 10 opponent. So I would love to see Buckley against Brady, but there aren't too many wrong answers here. So
no.
Any other general thoughts on this one before we move down the card?
Burns is kind of along that old guard that I was discussing. I named those 3 because those 3 were basically permanent fixtures within the title picture over the last 3 years. Burns had his shot, didn't quite make it, but at this point, if there's anybody who has the most, we'll say, fan cred out of the old guard, it's Burns, because he's still willing to go in there. He's still willing to throw down, whereas the others are being a little bit too picky and choosy to be getting a lot of plaudits from the fan base.
Marcus Mustard asks, who is a historical comparison for Brady? Ken Shamrock? I think that's a little unfair. I think Keith on the preview put it perfectly. If he'd come along 20 years ago, he would have been Tito Ortiz.
Yeah.
Like nobody could have stopped this takedown. Mean top game, and striking good enough to get past the people in front of him. It's such a deeper, more well-rounded sport now, and he's still a hell of a fighter. The people, including Iman report saying Brady versus Ian Gary. The problem with me for that is what happens if Brady wins? Because then you've removed a near future challenger for Bilal Muhammad, and you've replaced him with somebody that lost badly to Muhammad within somewhat recent memory. Like the last thing you want to do is knock off viable contenders for a newish champ. South of that, the co-main event was a women's flyweight matchup between Jessica Andrade and the streaking Natalia Silva. I really just want to burn through these fights that I picked wrong really quickly. I mean, I took a little bit of a flyer in picking Andrade here, and I was just dead wrong. And I knew I was dead wrong within about 45 seconds. Like within 45 seconds, I was like, I read this fight wrong. Even if Andrade catches Silva with something and just absolutely lamps her, that's just the luck of the draw. And I picked this fight wrong. Silva is kind of dazzling on the feet. The way she's built, because in the cage with anyone other than Jessica Andrade, she looks like a muscular, squat little tank of a woman, but her speed, both hand and foot speed, and just her kicking arsenal are really impressive. There aren't many people in the UFC that can throw the variety of kicks she does without telegraphing them, and just at the variety of kind of speeds and placements she has. Like I really feel as though her opponents don't know which kick is coming until it's well out of the chamber. Like kind of like, a good pitcher in baseball has the same motion, whether they're throwing a fastball, a cutter, or, a curveball. I feel like her kicks are kind of like that. Just the fact that she chambered a push kick to the chest and knocked Andrade all the way back onto her back from the distance she did. Like not many fighters could throw that kick with force in that short and that close of quarters. Like it was remarkable stuff. I wasn't completely on board with Silva, and I think I am now. That's what this fight did for me. What'd you take away from this one? Were you surprised by anything, especially impressed?
What I was especially impressed with was just kind of how Silva slowly unfurled everything. The fight really just kind of started on a simmer. You had Andrade cornering her against the cage, circling around, taking great angles and stuff like that. But she wasn't really throwing anything. So Silva was just like, all right, I'm gonna take what you give me, and just kind of picked her apart from there. So for the first 2 or 3 minutes, that's how the first round went. And that's kind of what gave the round away for Andrade, because she picked it up in the last half of the round or so. It was extremely competitive, a lot of fun, but she gave it away with the first half. That had to be around for Silva in my book. I saw a few people on Twitter that were saying otherwise, and I just couldn't help but scratch my head. But as Andrade opened up, so did Silva. That's when she really started to unleash those kicks that you were talking about, especially that one that, like you said, that center halfway across the cage, started using the clinch more. And I know that Andrade got some good punches in when they were in close quarters. But if we're talking about the pure clinch, I feel like Silva's knees were more effective. So, yeah, it was beautiful performance.
I'm with you there. And you mentioned the clinch. The fact that, and this is something that Keith harps on a lot, Silva initiated the clinch, when Andrade came into range, definitely when Andrade landed anything. And even if she didn't have the more effective offense from there, it at least mostly smothered Andrade's offense. And then you add to it the fact that, she had effective knees of her own in there. Really, really smart performance. It feels weird to ask this, considering that Andrade is only like 32 years old, but is she an old 32? Like was much of this could we lay it at the feet of Andrade just having so much tread off the tires?
No, she's definitely an old 32. It's not just that she has a lot of fights under her belt, but it's the way that she fights. The hard charging style. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, she's probably going to give more damage in those exchanges. But at the same time, she's fighting high level opponent after high level opponent, and taking shot after shot after shot. And a lot of those times she's been able to eat it. Yeah, there's the time where she was knocked out by Weili Zhang. She was knocked out by Yan Xiaonan as well. But there's been other times where she's been hit similarly hard and just kept going. She has taken a lot of damage over the years. So, I think back to like, oh god, who was the kid from Canada? Jordan Mean. Started his pro career at like 14 or something like that, and he was washed by the time he was in his mid-20s.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Andrade started at a young age. I know at 32 that there's still the possibility that she still has a few good years left. Like, I think that she's still going to be a gatekeeper to the top 5, probably for both 125 and 115. But competing for the title, I don't see that happening again.
Yeah, and understand that I know I'm standing on very thin ice when I say this, but Andrade did not look great physically. She has normally been just an absolute specimen at 115 or 125. To see her have just a little bit of softness around the middle at 125, maybe we lay that at the feet of her back surgery that she's had within the last 18 months or so. Maybe we attribute it to the disintegration of Paranava Leitudo, which she very publicly, said that she's suing Gilliard Paranava for like a ton of money, and the top fighters from there have been just flocking away. Like Carl Host has been away from there for 2 or 3 fights. Andrade has been away from there for like 2 fights, I think. Considering that somebody in the chat asked who was in Andrade's corner, and I don't know. Like, I looked at the 2 women and I don't recognize either of them. There might be that to it. Like, normally when a fighter leaves a well-established camp and is just like, I'm going to run my own camps, like, it almost never, like, I'm struggling to think of times it's ever been a good idea. Like, Amanda Nunes is about the only one I can think of who's like, yeah, I'm just going to build a gym at my house and train with like my friends and it's going to be fine. Otherwise, you can go as far back as BJ Penn. It's not good most of the time.
Let's give Mike Perry some credit. I mean, we all remember the fact his girlfriend cornered him. That was a great moment. I don't care what you say. It may not have been smart, but that was awesome.
It was absolutely brilliant. Mike Perry is a treasure. Assuming that Andrade is not retiring at 32, we had no inkling of that. Not even the ultra depressing Matt Schnell off-camera retirement. What do you do with her next? Like, matchmake these women. Let's matchmake Andrade first. What do you do with her?
Andrade is hard because she's fought damn near everybody, not just at 125, but 115. Anybody that's anywhere near that top 5, top 10 ranking, she's pretty much fought them. For somebody who isn't booked, I put down the winner of the Carini Silva Viviane Araujo fight in November. That's 2 fighters she hasn't fought, so and they're moving their way up. Let's see what they can do against her.
I don't mind that at all. My matchup for her is basically from the same school of thought. I'm thinking, okay, give her an up and comer in that division. I'm assuming she's going to stick at 125. Someone who's not immediately in line for a title shot, but is an up and comer that's earned a big name. I said Casey O'Neill. Like, O'Neill has a loss now in the UFC, so she has some rebuilding to do. I'd like to see if O'Neill could replicate the kind of performance that Silva put on against Andrade, but there aren't really any wrong picks there. I don't think. Just there's such that fleet of up and comers at women's 125. Like, if you said Macy Barber, I'm fine with that, even though Barber is actually who I'd give to Silva next. Got Barber on a 5-fight.
That's who I had too.
Oh, beautiful. If you are in the chat right now and you want something else for Natalia Silva next, other than Macy Barber, speak now or forever hold your peace. Prior to that, Steve Garcia and Kyle Nelson. Can I say right off the bat, I mean, I never remember to keep all my dude seriously thoughts for the end. I just need to spit them out now. Dude, seriously, you're going to talk about Kyle Nelson's like livestock and meat ranch as he blew weight by 3 pounds. This is not a ringing endorsement, guys. Like, don't. It was a tale of two fights, man. Steve Garcia comes out, slips. Kudos to Nelson. He was on him lightning fast. Sunk in the hooks. Looked like it might all be over for a moment. Garcia fights off what felt like, 6 different choke attempts in a row. And from there, just put an absolute whipping on Nelson until the thing was over. Okay. Here's an example of why intangibles count in MMA, in my opinion. Like, if you throw out Steve Garcia's skill set on paper, things he's good at, his physical gifts, his dimensions, like just his athleticism, you're like, okay, whatever. Sounds like a recipe for maybe a UFC level fighter. Just, there's something to be said for being ultra violent. As soon as Garcia escaped from the choke, you could tell that he was mad. And I'm sure he was mad at Nelson. I think he was mostly mad at himself for goofing up so bad. But you could see that he went to work with a purpose. And he didn't just do the, 2004 ground and pound, just like wild flailing. He was still accurate and measured, but just, Mean Machine is a very appropriate nickname for the man, at least tonight. Like, he's a violent dude, and it does make a difference. Tonight, it might have been the difference between finishing the fight in the first round and maybe just getting a 10-9 round, or hell, maybe just getting a 10-9 round against him instead of a 10-8, which is what it might have been after 2 minutes. Violence, a good thing.
Yeah. Now, the thing that I actually remember the most with regards to his ground and pound was just him driving his forearm and elbow into Nelson and just almost like big brothering him. Like, I don't know if you've had a big, I don't know if you got a big brother, but I remember my brother doing that. Okay, that makes sense. So I'm sure that you could figure out all sorts of torturous ways to do that to your brother. And I didn't hit him. You just dig your forearm into him and then my brother did that to me all the time. So I saw him doing that, and he was doing it with such glee that I'm just like, oh wow, yeah, no, that's exactly what you're talking about, though, the meanness factor to it.
And
he's not necessarily just thinking about doing damage. It's like, I'm going to make you pay the price. Putting him into uncomfortable positions, and as Nelson reacted to that, he got a couple of good shots in because of that.
He absolutely did, and at this point, I have owned up to this a few times. I was about as wrong as you can get about Steve Garcia. When the UFC signed him, I said on the preview ahead of his debut, this is one of the more puzzling signings the UFC has had in the last 5 or 6 years. Garcia wasn't even that dominant in local shows in New Mexico. What's the UFC doing? And he lost 2 of his first 3 fights. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then all of a sudden he turned the corner. He's sitting on the longest streak of consecutive knockouts in the UFC against just increasingly stout opposition. Like, Kyle Nelson is, well, another guy that I underestimated, but he had been on a 3-fight win streak of his own and had been looking very impressive. What do you do with this man now? At what point does he stop being a bonus magnet and general violent curiosity? And at what point do you have to start treating him like an actual fringe contender? Like, what do you do with this guy now?
Well, okay, if we're being honest, I don't think you're the only one who underestimated him. I threw out a tweet tonight saying, if you'd asked me if either of these guys would have been on the roster 3 years ago at this point, no, I assume both of them would have been long gone. So, I think that it's just one of those deals that everybody underestimated these guys. So all the more credit to them for being here. But as far as Garcia, 5 straight wins, all of them finishes. I want to give him a ranked opponent, but at the same time, the best win out of all those is probably Nelson. So I would actually probably say, you know what, one more. If I were to I put down David Onama, somebody who's fairly young, who I think would be able to provide, has the potential to match his violence. I'm not going to say I guarantee you he will, just because, like you said, Steve Garcia is mean as shit, but he's got every possibility of being able to match that.
I like that just fine. And I was looking for a violence-based matchup that would represent a logical next step up for him. Onama fills that bill. I also considered Julian Erosa there. He is another just live by the sword, die by the sword guy in that division who has been winning a surprising number of his fights. What I finally settled on was Dan Ige and Laurent Murphy are fighting pretty soon. If Murphy wins, I think his record is going to demand that he get a higher ranked opponent than Steve Garcia. But if Ige wins, Ige versus Garcia sounds like a hell of a fun time to me. Prior to that, Matt Schnell had a last minute change of opponent. He'd been scheduled to take on Alessandro Costa. Costa withdrew. I frankly didn't think the UFC was going to be able to find anybody on like 6 days notice or whatever it was. But in steps, what's his name? Cody Durden. And Durden not only picks up unexpected paycheck, he picks up 2 unexpected paychecks because he got his win money. And I haven't seen the bonuses announced yet, but he might have picked up a triple paycheck. Talk to me about this fight for a sec.
Okay. I don't see the bonuses yet either. Anyway, that was a hell of a lot of fun. It was enough fun, because Durden wanted to test Schnell's chin, and you can't blame him for that because Schnell's chin has been checked many a times previously. So the two of them just got into a Rock'em Sock'em Robot slugfest for the first 3.5 minutes of the first round. And there was no way in hell that they were going to be able to keep that pace up. They didn't because they slowed down at the end of the first. But, oh, man, that they were well on pace to being fight of the night, and they very well may have ended up getting it. And then I did not expect Durden to catch Schnell in a submission. I figured if there was going to be a sub, it was going to be Schnell catching Durden. That just caught me by surprise. Who didn't Tim Elliott catch him in something similar? I want to say that he did.
I think it was Tim Elliott. I'm thinking of the high.
Let's see.
I think it was.
But yeah, no, I just where did it go? Where did it go? Yep. Yeah, it was okay. It was Elliott, but the reason why we're struggling to remember is because it was Ultimate Fighter.
There you go. All right. Impressive stuff from Cody Durden. And he is kind of the last guy I would have expected to step up and put on this kind of performance just because he himself is a good sized flyweight who looks like he has quite a weight cut to make the limit. I mean, he's a guy that he fought at 135 once or twice early in his run, either because he stepped up on short notice or just hadn't decided where he was going to settle in at and was not undersized for that division. So to step up and to be in shape, the kind of shape to do that, to at least hold up his end of a wild flyweight slugfest for 4 minutes or so, and then the presence of mind to take advantage of Schnell taking that bad shot, slapping on the UFC booth, I think called it an anaconda choke, but it was an ninja choke. It was all neck, no arm or anything in there. Fantastic stuff. And there was no getting out of it once he had it on.
That Schnell was in panic mode. Like he tried rolling out of it. Durden was right with him. And then that double tap, when you see that at this level, you know that somebody is hurting to get some air at that point. So excellent grip there by Durden.
Impressive stuff from Cody Durden. And as I kind of alluded to a few minutes ago, Schnell retired in the immediate wake of the fight. And there's a certain sad note to all MMA at the Apex. It feels weird to have victorious fighters yelling to an empty TV studio with 200 people in it. It feels weird to see fighters walking out and they have to basically take the long way around the cage just to have enough time for like half their song to play. But I think the ultimate sadness award comes to this: retiring at the Apex and retiring off camera at the Apex. What a bummer. And what a disservice to Matt Schnell. Like he had been injury prone and a little inconsistent even when he was uh, healthy. But for a couple of years there, he was a consistent top 10 guy in one of the best divisions in the UFC and was a tough out for pretty much anybody on any given night. And he gets nothing. It bummed me out.
And the thing is, given that, top 10, okay, that's not necessarily great. He was never necessarily a fan favorite, but it's like, you guys gave Alan Joban a go away video. I mean, don't get me wrong, Alan Joban was a lot of fun. He's a great analyst at this point. But if you're going to give Alan Joban one, Matt Schnell deserves something similar to that too. I mean,
Sure.
Dana White likes to talk about, well, he tried to get rid of the flyweight division, which I think was one of the stupidest things that they've ever tried to do. But Schnell is a guy that some fights have been at bantamweight, but he had 14 UFC fights.
Yeah.
Only 4 of them went the distance. In a division like flyweight, that's the type of guy that Dana White should be in love with. The type of guy that's going to bring it every time, kill or be killed. And nothing.
Tiga in that top points out the Apex has its drawbacks, but I'd prefer to watch a fight there than the stadium. No. For watching in person, absolutely. I'd be happy to take in a fight at the Apex. If I lived in Vegas, or hell, if I even lived in Utah, like Mr. Fox over there to my left, I would be at Apex shows on the reg. Like, I love that. Dude, I'm an old punk rocker. Most of my favorite concerts of all time had fewer than 1,000 people in attendance. Most of my favorite fight cards that I've seen in person had fewer than 2,000 in attendance. I'm on board for that. But for watching on TV, like a dead silent TV studio sucks. Yeah. So I just wanted to make that clear.
And I can say this too, I don't know. I'm sure most of the people in the chat have been to a live UFC show, but or even a Bellator show or whatever. If you're in the audience for one of those when there is a highlight reel knockout, there is nothing that creates more of a surge. Like, I've been to NBA games where the game was won on a last second 3-pointer. Fantastic feeling. Does not compare to a knockout. Does not. You want the crowd there if you are in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that one, or should we move on?
Good job by Durden.
Yep.
I think that I saw Tim Elliott say that he would want to. He was interested in clashing with him, and hey, that'd be one that I'd be fun to see happen again.
Yeah,
or not again, but yeah.
And you know what? On a night when we had glove grab controversy, dueling nut shots, like 3 nut shots in one round, fence grabs, it only seems appropriate to match Tim Elliott up with one of the fighters on the card. So that gets my stamp of approval for sure. Before that, I believe this was the main card opener. Not like it matters since it's all on the same channel, but a lightweight clash between Trevor Peek and Yanal Ashmos. This one was as close to a pick'em as there was on the card. I think Ashmos was the tiniest underdog, even by the time they walked in, but pretty good stuff. For as long as Trevor Peek was a complete maniac in the cage, there was going to be a hard ceiling on like how far he could go. But I think we've seen the hard ceiling on how far he can go now anyway, just because his defensive wrestling and bottom position grappling were at such a disadvantage against Ashmos. So if he's probably not going to be a top 10 guy either way, I would rather he go back to being the berserker. That's just me. What'd you think of this fight?
I gotta agree with you. Like there were parts of it that I was kind of impressed with Peek in his progress, but you just looking at him, you can see like he has this look on his face, like, okay, I gotta remember to do this. I gotta remember to do this. And then every now and then he'll just go into that berserker mode, like overswing or whatever it is. And that's what Ashmus was able to take advantage of to pick up the win. But, Peek is going so against type right now. And if he can find that comfort level and be able to blend the technique and the berserker mode to his best benefit, great. But I'm with you. He looked like he was having the hardest time remembering to stay disciplined out there. And I'm not going to say it wasn't a fun fight. It was an all right fight, but it wasn't the type of fight that that we want out of Trevor Peek at this point.
Yeah. Do you or did you ever watch Aqua Teen Hunger Force?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Meatwad
All right, because
Frylock. Yeah.
yeah, most of my references are kind of lost on Keith, but I said that if Aqua Teen Hunger Force had a character that was a can of dip, like Trevor Peek would be that
Oh,
character.
oh yeah. No, that's yeah. And you know what, man? If he's not available, get Bryce Mitchell. But yeah,
We weren't going to matchmake these guys, but Boz says Peak versus Nate Landwehr. That would be the all fighters that are American, but Ben still needs subtitles to understand them fight. So I'm on board. Like I've lived in the US basically my whole life. I mean, I came here as a baby. I've lived in the South for most of my adult life, and I can't always understand Nate Landwehr on the first try either. Yanal Ashmos, may I just say, I mean, we're talking about professional MMA at the highest level. Pretty much everybody south of heavyweight is in fantastic shape, but Yanal Ashmos' arms were ludicrous tonight. Like they looked like 2014 Chael Sonnen arms just stapled onto a lightweight. My goodness. That's apropos of nothing at all. Sticking with the lightweights, since we lost OSP versus Span. Thank you. Before that, Rong Zhu and Chris Padilla. I picked. I was going to say I picked wrong and I picked wrong, but I picked wrong and I picked wrong. Pick looked good for a while there. Rong Zhu was just a little bigger, a little quicker, a little more technical than Padilla, and then it all turned on one elbow strike in close quarters, and it caught Rong Zhu so unawares that he thought he'd been poked in the eye.
Yep. No, that was one of the funnier sequences of the night. You know, just like he immediately points at him, like, you know, telling the ref, "He poked me in the eye." No,
Nope.
but holy crap, the swelling of that eye afterwards immediately. Holy crap! Like,
oh, it looked like some illustration from like a medieval like witchfinder manual. Like there was like some homunculus demon that was about to come out of his eye socket. That was one of the more unique and gruesome injuries in high level MMA that I could. It might be the most gruesome bloodless injury that I can remember.
Yeah,
Like
no,
sort of like all the people that have like snapped their tibia and fibula and like their foot is flapping around. That's pretty gross. But the eyeball, it inflated instantly, and it was so huge that I was worried that something was going to come popping out. It was absolutely. Oh
yeah, no, there's been hematomas that we remember throughout the years. Mark Hominick,
sure.
yeah, Jacek.
You know,
Never quite seen an eye just pop out like that.
Yeah.
So that one I'm 100%. I'm pretty sure that one's going to be stuck in my memory for the rest of my life. But oh, but yeah, no, that referee definitely made the right call to stop that, because I can only imagine, like, I have nightmares of James Thompson and Kimbo Slice with the ear.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I still think that they either let Thompson go into the cage with that ear undrained, or even actually injected more liquid into it just so that Kimbo would basically have a red panic button to hit if he didn't like what he was getting.
I actually kind of agree with you on that one. So, you know, we know that they told Seth Petrozelli to stand up and bang with him. So
yeah, but yeah, it's way up there. And you know what? Like, I still think Chris Padilla at absolute best is borderline UFC material, but he 100% earned another fight. And at this point, he is probably going to get the fight out his whole first 4-fight deal. So hell, if he wins his next fight, like at worst, he's 2-2 across his first 4 fights in the UFC, and he probably gets another contract. Good night to be Chris Padilla. Tonight, the taco is a taco supreme. Good job, sir. Prior to that, or was it immediately prior? I should stop looking at my notes and start looking at the actual.
Prior to that was Dolgarian and Murat.
Okay, it was Dolgarian versus Murat. Isaac Dolgarian walks in as the biggest betting favorite in UFC history.
Oh man,
I think they put the odds up there as like minus 2,000. There were lines as high as like minus 3,500. The best line you could find anywhere within 3 weeks before the fight was like minus 1,800. So when the odds are that wide, just getting your hand raised at the end is not enough to hold serve. Like
No.
if Bulgarian had won a 30-27 or like God forbid, like a 29-28 decision tonight, he would have been on my Bears list. Like you're supposed to do better than that. He did better than that. I don't know if 4 minutes and 54 seconds of control time in a 5-minute round is a UFC record, but if it isn't, I don't see how it could be like how much better you could do. Like he couldn't have done any better if Murat like sat in his corner to start the fight and just waited for him. Bulgarian's wrestling still absolutely dominant. Bulgarian, kind of like Sean Brady, my concern with him, I thought like Bulgarian's next UFC loss is probably going to come in a fight where he's out wrestling somebody badly in the early going and just gasses out. I'm still worried that Bulgarian is going to tire himself out with his kind of frenetic ground game, but Murat wasn't the guy to push him to his limits. Like good on Murat for going all in on his fight career. They talked about him moving to Vegas and bringing his family with him, which all those details just make it sadder when someone gets obliterated. But yeah, it was not his night. To what extent are you a believer in Isaac Dolgarian? And anyone in the chat, let me know. Like, where do you see Dolgarian ceiling? Is he a future champ? Is he a future kind of top 10 mainstay for years? Is he going to flame out before he even gets there? Let us know what you think of the Midwest Choppa.
I don't feel like I learned anything new about Dolgarian. Like you said, he had a lot of top control, but he even said it himself in his post fight interview. He's like, "Yeah, just being patient." So there was a lot of lay and pray there, just waiting for Murat to make a mistake. And I'm not going to say that's dumb, that it is actually pretty intelligent in a fight like this. But at the same time, like you said, when you're as big of a favorite as he is, he basically needs to decapitate him or something like that. It's got to be something that we haven't ever seen before if he's going to live up to the hype. And I don't think he did. That doesn't mean that Dolgarian isn't a bust by any means. I mean, he's still very inexperienced. What was that, like his 7th or 8th fight?
It was his 8th fight.
Yeah. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern with regards to my thoughts on him after tonight. Like he didn't do anything wrong, but he didn't do anything that made me say, wow.
Yeah, agreed in some ways, because if he had just obliterated Murat in 90 seconds, I think we might have learned even less about him than we did. At least he got his first finish outside of the first round. So incrementally, we know a little more about him, but I'm in report. I put on screen. This is what I think just about everybody is thinking right now.
Yes.
We need to see him against an established vet before we can say. And I found myself thinking during the fight, a Darren Elkins or Damon Jackson type veteran who's a good wrestler would be a super, super trap fight for Isaac Dolgarian at this point in his development. Like I know Elkins and Pineda are fighting pretty soon. Giving Dolgarian the winner of that sounds good to me.
So I actually initially put down Danny Silva. He's not necessarily a veteran, but he proved to be more crafty than I thought he would be in his debut. He beat Kulibao, but more that I think about it, I think Julian Erosa would be a lot of fun. Just like he obliterates Erosa like that, or Erosa makes him pay a heavy price down the stretch. So I think that I'm going to go with Erosa at this point.
I mean, Julian Erosa, you've watched our show enough to know that Keith and I are both big fans of Julian Erosa. And yeah,
it's impossible not to be.
Yeah, it's like if you don't like Julian Erosa, something's wrong with you. And that's one where, yeah, he could absolutely obliterate Erosa, or he could be tired and shoot right into a guillotine and Erosa would pop his head off. I like
Dev
that.
makes a good point too. Dev actually threw out Billy Q. That's not another bad choice either.
Well, and Billy Q, like Elkins, is a guy that his game is built on. Yeah, he gets beat up by quicker, younger, more athletic opponents, weathers the storm, and comes back and puts it on him in the second half of the fight. So yeah, like a fighter from that mold, I think is the best next step for Bulgarian. I am cautiously on board with him still as a prospect. It was startling right after the fight to see him standing next to his teammate in the same weight class, Yusuf Zalal. And yeah, granted, Zalal probably had shoes on, but Zalal looked 10 inches taller than he did. And Zalal's
Yeah.
not that big a featherweight. So I mean, Ilia Topuria is your champ right now. So it's not like you have to be a 6 foot tall featherweight to get work done. And Volkanovski was even shorter. But yeah, that was kind of an eye opener to me, seeing just how stocky Bulgarian is.
Yeah.
Before that, a men's flyweight contest between Felipe Dos Santos and Andre Lima. Lima, undefeated, looking to get known for something other than getting bitten by a guy. I'm sure he wants to live that down and be famous for something else. Lima ends up picking up the unanimous decision. I assume you scored it for Lima, but if you didn't, let me know.
No, it was absolutely for Lima.
Yeah. I came away pretty impressed with both fighters. Speaking for myself here, men's flyweight is a great division, but it's not as deep as the next 4 weight classes up, like 135, 145, 155, 170. The crazy thing about those divisions is you get down to like the number 25 guy in the division, and it's still a really good fighter. You get down to the 20th or 25th best men's flyweight in the UFC, and you're getting down. I mean, at least you're getting down to people like this, people with fewer than 10 pro fights where there's still a bit of a wait and see attitude about them. It's not as deep a division. Having said that, I like both these guys. I feel like both of these guys might be future contenders in this division. I mean, at age 23 and 25, there's every chance that they might fight again a couple years down the road for higher stakes. What was your take on this fight? Like, do you agree, or did you lose faith or hope in either of these guys?
Definitely didn't lose faith or hope. I was impressed with Lima in the sense that we hadn't seen anything of his ground game before, and he showed that he has something that he can do there. But it's kind of funny. I had some bulls and bears listed, and spoiler, I actually had Dos Santos as one of my bears because the guy could not get up. Like, Lima isn't somebody who's known for his ground game, but he took him down and he held him down. In flyweight, that's supposed to be Scramble City. So that was kind of like, wait, buddy, are you even going to try to initiate a scramble? Like, there was very little that he did there. And so in that sense, I was actually very disappointed with Dos Santos. Like, on the feet, yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. He wows me. And I think that, it's not like I'm saying that I think he's going to get cut anytime soon. He's still young. What, 23, I think is what they said he was. But he's going to have to be able to get the ground game fixed. His first fight was with Manel Kopp. Kopp wasn't going to take him down.
No.
I can't remember the sophomore effort, but yeah, he needs to get that fixed. Otherwise, he'll just be a fun action fighter. But I think he has so much
it
more
was
in
Victor
him.
Altamirano, who kind of
Yes.
tends to fight whatever fight comes his way.
Yes.
Like he's not one of those impose my will type guys. Yeah, I can see that. And it's a little surprising for a guy coming from the camp he does. Like,
Yeah.
shoot a box Diego Lima, you're looking to Charles Oliveira, every time you go to train. Charles Oliveira is not a guy known for leaving both of his shoulder blades on the canvas for very long. Unless he's throwing up a triangle. So it's a loss for Dos Santos, but one where he definitely has things to take back to the drawing board. Like, if you're his handlers, you can go back and on Monday when you're back in the gym say, okay, if you did these 3 things differently, maybe you win that fight. So, but yeah, still, yeah, I could see being a little disappointed in his performance. Gabriel Santos versus Yi Jia was before that. Men's featherweight contest. I said on the preview that the Yi Jia is just like a sock caught in the sock eating dryer of Road to UFC. They might need to send him back there. Like he looks like a UFC quality featherweight in a vacuum. He's a young guy with a million fights, which I mean, China's regional scene cranks out a lot of those, but like Santos just seemed to be bigger, stronger, faster, more skilled everywhere. Like it's almost to Yi's credit that this was as competitive as it was from round to round. And then eventually it wasn't. Like I was scoring this one for Sherdog. I got roped in because it was one of those all hands on deck nights. I didn't give any 10-8 rounds to Santos, but two of the official scores did, and I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, no, I gave Santos a 10-8 for that first round. You know, he came this close to putting Yiza away, and Yiza never threatened him seriously at any point in the fight, much less that round. So I felt obligated to do so. But yeah, fantastic performance from Santos. I can't remember if it was you and Keith discussing whether or not he was the best 0-2 fighter in the UFC. But I remember hearing somebody saying that over the week, and I'm like, he very well may be, because he had that tit for tat fight with Laron Murphy, established in the top 15, and then there was the loss to Onama, who I think we underestimated Onama going into that fight, but just the type of performance that we all expected from Santos following his loss to Murphy. Just looked fantastic. Happy to see him get back on track. But I'm with you. The UFC is trying to force the whole road to UFC thing right now. It's just not quite there. And I think Yiza's performance kind of exemplified that.
Yeah. Super fast shutter speeds and getting the, kick face and punch face is one of the delights of being an MMA fan. Andrade, welcome to the chat, by the way. I don't know if we've seen you here before, but we're glad to have you here. Yeah, he had the El Kukui face, the who had another great one? Frankie Edgar, when he got face kicked, had a great one. And I like how you spelled his name, Yiza. That just makes it sound like he's another member of like Wu-Tang, like he got, Jizza, Rizza, and Yizza. Anyway, that was a washing. Before that, women's strawweight action, Jackie Amarim against Vanessa Demopoulos. Amarim was a big favorite going into this. I could understand why, just considering that at the things that Demopoulos is best at, Amarim is better. And then on top of that, younger, bigger, more athletic. We ended up with some controversy as Demopoulos, even before the armbar, like it was set up by, kind of a transition position where she was yelling, she's grabbing my glove, she's grabbing my glove. If when they went to the replay, Amarim did in fact have like 3 fingers, not where gloves are usually grabbed. They usually get grabbed in the palm.
Yes.
That's your typical, that's your Tim Elliott, glove grab. It was, on the wrist outside here, like the tape holds down the cuff of the glove pretty tightly, but you can get fingers under there, obviously. What was your take on that?
Well, that one's hard to put a definitive stamp on, because like it's easy to say, well, okay, maybe it was an accident, because like you said, that's not the typical place where gloves are grabbed, and she was partially grabbing the wrist, and like you said, just but yeah, there. I don't want to say that she was purposely cheating, but I can't say that definitively. I will say that Demopoulos seemed to be caring more about that than she was defending herself.
Tiga Not Ta agrees with you. You're in a fight. Stop calling out the glove grab and fight.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. I think that just completely overwhelmed her, because as soon as the fight was stopped, what did she do? She sat up and was yelling at the ref about the glove grab. It wasn't, that tells you where her mind still was at that point. It wasn't, I've got to stop this. It was like, They're grabbing the glove. Wait, wait, what are you doing to me? Stop grabbing the glove. Wait, just her head was not where it should have been. I feel bad that the fight ended the way that it did, but part of that is on her, I do believe.
Yeah, it's a tough situation because multiple things I think are true here. Like true thing number one is that that helped finish
Yeah.
the fight.
No,
Right?
it did,
That
absolutely.
that led directly to the armbar, and for all we know, she might not have been able to get that without the assist of the glove grab. So that's true fact number one, in my opinion.
Agreed.
True fact number two is that I don't think Emery did it on purpose. There are certain fouls, like fence grabs, they're basically always on purpose. Eye pokes are never on purpose, but they're usually negligent. You had your fingers extended, as you were approaching your foe. Here,
Yeah.
if you watch the whole if you watch like 6 or 8 seconds of that exchange, like Emery like grabs here as her hand slides down, like
Yep.
she's not looking at the arm. She's just like trying desperately to control that arm and
Yeah, you're
move
describing it
the
better
Demopoulos
than I
where she
was
wants
trying
to.
to. Yeah.
And yeah, her fingers hung out there for a sec, but she let it go, ended up, just grabbing the hand and finishing it. So illegal, yes. Intentional, no. And the thing is, we've got one of the biggest cards, if the UFC is to be believed, one of the biggest cards in history coming a week from now. So the real truth is that we're never going to hear about this again after Monday, where Sherdog and every other outlet will run a story where Demopoulos, says she was cheated and says she's considering filing an appeal. We all know that appeal is going to go nowhere, and
Yep.
it's just going to, we won't think about it again until the next time we see a glove grab like that. That's kind of how it goes. It's a bummer, but as you and several viewers pointed out tonight, Demopoulos did herself no favors by letting it take her out of her game and stopping there and then like yelling she's grabbing my glove.
Yeah, no, and if we're being honest, there's been more egregious fouls that have been committed on higher stakes planes. The one that always comes to my mind, UFC 142, Aldo's blatant fence grab as Mendez is about to throw him to the mat, and right before the round ends, the fight's over with a knee to the face. So that didn't get overturned or anything like that. This is not going to get overturned. I feel badly for Demopoulos, but them's the breaks.
Yeah. And obviously Nevada is kind of the bastion of high level MMA because it's the UFC's de facto home base. But despite that, or maybe because of that, it's one of the worst places to try to get something overturned. It's an extremely conservative athletic commission you're talking about there. So yeah, bummer for everybody involved, but gun to my head, Emery was going to win that fight anyway, even if she didn't get the armbar right then and there. Chandler fish hooking Dustin. Well, if the fight had ended differently, but we might talk more about that one. But yeah, those two did not like each other afterwards. Before that, Andrade Petroski versus Dylan Budka, and I think they pronounced it Budka. Either way, Budka, fresh from a trip to the Kyle Nelson buffet restaurant and exotic animal chow down ranch, missed weight as well. If I held up the weigh-in pictures of those two guys, like to my wife, who's usually over there on the couch watching her stuff while I'm watching fights, and only comes over if something's interesting going on. Like if I showed her the weigh-in pictures, I said one of these two guys blew weight by 3 pounds, I don't think she would have picked Budka.
No.
Andrade Petroski looks more like an MMA fighter from a movie than just about anyone in the UFC right now.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way to describe him. And Budka, if I remember right, from his Contender Series fight, Dana White was telling him, "Yeah, you look like you should go to welterweight." I mean, he is not big for 185 at all. But
no,
yeah,
like he and Petroski seem to be about the same height, but like his frame isn't the same, and it's not carrying the kind of muscle that would preclude a move to 170. At this point, I still think Budka's a pretty decent fighter. He's now 0-2 in the UFC, I think he might have a future, at least as a guy who sticks around, but it probably needs to be at 170. And if I'm him or his handlers, like, I'm taking the next 5 or 6 months off, coming back after actually kind of retooling his physique and getting down to 170 in a healthy way. Because for a guy that we're talking about maybe should fight a weight class down, blowing weight is not a good look.
Well, he won his Contender Series fight by being the grittier fighter.
Yeah.
Just kind of grinding away against the fence, that type of stuff. I was actually shocked that he got the contract, but regardless, that's the type of a fight that Petrosky does as well. And Petrosky's bigger, he's stronger, he's more athletic. Butka's not going to be able to find a hell of a lot of success with that at 185. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we'll just say Dana White says a lot of things. But on that one, he was right. He was right. Budka would be better off if he could find a way to retool his body to slide down to 170, because then I think that his high pressure grinding style might actually be able to find some success at welterweight.
Agreed. And while 170 is well stocked with bully wrestlers like Petrosky, it really only is once you get to the top 10. And frankly, Budka has other things to worry about right now than what the top 10 of any of his divisions looks like. So yeah, I think he needs to just go to a division where he could win some fights, and that looks more likely to be 170 right now.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we had the tough 32 castmate fight that got pushed to this card from the card 2 weeks ago. It was Zigomantas Ramashka versus Nathan Fletcher. Fletcher did what he was supposed to. I mean, he was a moderate favorite, came in and won the first round pretty handily, won the second round, all minute and 14 seconds of it, getting the arm triangle choke on Ramashka. Considering that the Ultimate Fighter is supposed to be an avenue for talent to reach the UFC, I think it's fair to ask you this. Do you see upside in either of these guys? Like, not even talking about future contender status. Like, let's forget that for now. Do you think either of these guys will be in the UFC 2 years from now?
Oh boy. There's a chance for both of them. I'm not going to completely write them off. If there's one that I think probably will, it's Fletcher. He's more developed. I will give Ramashka some credit. He did impress me with those reversals on the mat in the first round. I was not expecting that from him. I just thought he was going to be strike or die. So he showed he had a little bit more than what I thought. But it's not like there's not a lot of young bodies at 145 that are vying to do the same thing that they are anyway. So I'd say probably Fletcher will be around in a year, probably not Ramashka, but there's no way I'd put money on that either.
Yeah. And as a couple people in the chat have pointed out, Fletcher will get every opportunity to stick around just because he is a Liverpoolian. He is a teammate of Patty and Molly. He has a little bit of that attitude to him where, win a couple fights and it'll probably really come out. As a fighter, I think Ramashka might actually have higher upside. He has some unique physical tools, but he's not enough of a finished product at this point. And he's young enough that maybe he gets cut, goes and wins a couple fights somewhere and comes back. Who knows? At any rate, that's it. That's the entire, what did it end up being? 12 fight card of UFC Vegas 97. Let's get to the fun stuff here. Shall we do the cut list first?
Yeah, let's do the cut list.
All right. Looking at this, I think I might only have one person for my cut list.
I already know who that is.
All right. I've got one person for my cut list. Do you have more than one?
I've got two, but I'm pretty sure I already know who your one is.
Okay. Now I
is it Murat?
It is. And here's the thing. Yeah. He's only lost 2 fights. One of them was on short notice, but in neither fight has he really shown that he belongs? I feel bad, man. Like, why'd you have to tell me that he moved his family and his 3-year-old kids to Vegas with him to train full time? I don't need to have emotions about this, but like, even after moving to Vegas, he's still a guy that got to the UFC through that New England cartel, bodies for the sacrifice pit, uh, you know, super highway that gets
Yeah,
guys in on short notice and just gets them
Keith's so proud
absolutely
of it.
slaughtered. Keith just wants to make himself like as disliked as possible on the streets of New England, like as if being a cop isn't hard enough already.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
now when someone gives him the eye when he's at like Sam's Club, he's like, "Oh man, are you like a local coach?" And I said some shit about your fighters, or are you some guy that like I arrested? Like, anyway,
But
yeah,
or
Brendan Roth was one I had.
maybe he coached against their softball team and eliminated them. I don't know. That's always a
Yeah.
possibility too.
Yes.
So Keith's doing everything to be the most disliked person in New England.
Yeah. Yeah, that was mine. But if you've got another one, I'm open to being convinced.
Let's see here. Yeah, Dev was with me. I had Butko on there. He missed weight. That was kind of the thing that I'm like, you know what? You missed weight. 2 losses, neither of them very impressive. They've got a lot of bodies that they've got to make room for with the new crop of DWCS. So,
yep. I mean, the Contender Series is back. It's 10 episodes, and the UFC signs an average of 4 fighters per episode, and that's not counting the ones who get short notice bookings later. Like,
yep.
I mean, I've said it before. If you can lose on the Contender Series and still get signed, then what is the point of the Contender Series?
No, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah,
I have not liked that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I agree that those are fun fights, but if anything, say, okay, we're signing you right back as soon as we can for another appearance, and along those lines, I don't like the idea of them doing it for a season. How about you do a Contender Series once a month, that way it's spread out a little bit more. I don't know. That's been a bugaboo for me for a little while. I'll digress from that though.
Yeah. I'm A-okay with Budka going. So circle of life, in with the old, out with the old, in with the new, as Devin Tejada would put it. Budka goes as well. Next up, Bulls and Bears. I think most of you in the chat are regulars. You know what this is. Bulls, Bears, stock market reference. You want to do Bulls or Bears first?
I gave a sneak peek with the Bears when I said I had Dos Santos on there. Not that I think that he's going to get cut or anything, but just disappointed in the ground game. So we'll go with that first.
Okay. Bears, you want to go first or you want me to go first?
I'll go. Like I said, I already kind of started. So I had Dos Santos. After that, I had the guys from Road to UFC. It's not just that they lost. Rongju, I believe, was favored, and him losing doesn't help. And then Yijia just did not look like he belonged. So I got to say Road to UFC is one of the Bears. And I hate to say it, but Gilbert Burns, it's his 3rd loss in a row. And 50-45s was the general scorecard. It was closer than that score indicates, but still a 50-45 is a 50-45. Gilbert stays as an elite fighter or over. He still has something to offer, but yeah, I hate to say it.
Yeah, I'm on board with all of those. Boz, Rongju, Yanal Ashmos, and Brendan Murat, easiest Bears of his life. Whew. Boz, handing out Bears to winning fighters. Woof. I agree with all yours. Well, so I'm not going to pile the 3 more on there since mine would have overlapped yours. I will throw out Jessica Andrade. Andrade, she is one of the most accomplished fighters in the history of women's MMA. She is all over the UFC record book, like the most appearances of any woman. Like she's up there for most wins. She's got, I think she has the most knockouts, but she's also something like 2-6 now as an underdog. And in some ways that's not her fault. Like she doesn't set the betting lines, but it's an indication that she really is a pile driver. She is a one-use tool. And if something's a bad matchup for her, she doesn't really come with any surprises.
Yeah.
Like, and one of her wins as an underdog was her slamming Rose Namajunas on her head. Like, that was a fantastic win, but it wasn't a replicable path to victory. Like,
yeah, and that was a fight she was losing until she won. So,
and I mean, it is possible to be on the other side of that. Like, you can look at someone like Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz was an underdog in 10 of 11 fights leading up to when he won the light heavyweight title. And like, yeah, he was, and he went like 9-2 in those fights. Like, it is possible to be somebody who consistently wins as the underdog because you have great game planning, great corner. You're an overachiever yourself. But yeah, bad night at the office for Jessica Andrade, and she probably is on the decline at this point. And this just kind of shows it. Yeah, I mean, she didn't have anything but a puncher's chance after the first few seconds of the fight.
Yeah.
Bulls, things whose stock is up. Shall I go first this time?
Yeah.
All right. I usually stay clear of main event fighters for Bulls and Bears. Like, the stakes of those fights are usually manifest, but I got to say Sean Brady, even if Gilbert Burns is fading, just Brady showed a lot tonight, like by his striking, looking on point, by being the fresher fighter in the 5th round. He dispelled a lot of kind of the nagging question marks over his upside as a potential future contender. So good night at the office for Sean Brady in the biggest opportunity of his career, or at worst, second biggest after the Bilal fight. He came up with the best performance of his career. Bulls, Chris Padilla. When people expect nothing from you, delivering anything probably gets you on the Bulls list, but he's got something now that is going to show up on highlight reels and on blogs and articles of, like, nastiest injuries in MMA for as long as people watch this sport. So beautiful job doing ugly things. And Gabriel Santos. I think it was, in fact, Keith and I who said he's the best 0-2 fighter in the UFC. There's a reason that despite being 0-2, he was like a minus 300 favorite against Yi Jia, and he showed it. He was dominant, and he looked very much like a potential future contender in one of the toughest divisions in the UFC. So those are mine. Got any Bulls to add?
I duplicated you with Santos, especially given, what's the alternative? He loses, he's 0-3, he's probably out. So saved his job and looked dominant in the process. So big bull as far as I'm concerned. Cody Durden came in on 4 days notice. Like you said, picked up 2 additional paychecks and won in a very unexpected way. The fact that he was able to sub Schnell.
Make that 3 paychecks. The bonuses are out. Your fight of the night is Natalia Silva versus Jessica Andrade. Your performances of the night, Steve Garcia and Cody Durden.
Good fight. I don't know if I would have made that fight of the night, but yeah, that works. That works. I think I said earlier I probably would have done Durden and Schnell, but regardless, glad to see that Durden got the extra paycheck. So he's definitely a bull in my book. And then Steve Garcia, a guy that we've already discussed. We did not expect him to still be in the UFC at this point, and now he's got 5 consecutive fights with a knockout. That's fan-freaking-tastic. Happy to see it. We all love an underdog story like that. So Steve Garcia is a bull as well.
Absolutely. From there, I've dropped a few dude seriouslys already, just because, again, I'm terrible at remembering to write them down. So I just spit them out as they occur to me. But do you have any dude seriouslys?
I got a couple. In the first round of Santos and Yi Jia, he threw that sweep kick that just completely reminded me of something from like Mortal Kombat when they throw those. I was like, where the crap, dude? Seriously? I mean, dude, seriously, that was awesome. But dude, seriously,
dude, seriously can be a positive. It usually isn't,
yeah.
But
Marcus Mustard makes a good point. The wardrobe malfunction in the co-main event. Yeah, that's not a bad dude. Seriously. But the other one that I had written down was the controversy with the armbar from Emerim and Demopoulos, and you got Dom Cruz saying, "Oh yeah, beautiful technique on the armbar." Let's just ignore the glove grab, Dom. Dude, seriously?
Oh, that reminds me.
Oh yes,
Dude.
Andrade's.
Yeah.
100%.
Dominic Cruz. We learned tonight that Dominic Cruz is like, I don't know if he's like some like Doctor Who style Time Lord or something, but we learned that time passes differently for him because he had two different dude seriously moments that indicated that he does not understand the passage of time. After Isaac Dolgarian tapped out Brendan Marat in the second round of their fight, Cruz said, now Dolgarian has proven that he can wrestle for 15 minutes. You can't do that after 9.5 minutes of fighting. It is not physically possible. Then
I got a potential explanation, man. He listens to his podcast at double time, so you can go 15 minutes and 7.5. So
that's probably what it is. The other thing he said was that he grew up watching Gilbert Burns at Abu Dhabi. The only problem is that Gilbert Burns is 38 and Dominic Cruz is 39. So unless Dominic Cruz is a seriously late bloomer, like he went to kindergarten, at age 26, that's not physically possible either. Anyway, Dominic Cruz, he's a fighting man, not a math man. That's what we learned tonight.
More and more, like he don't get me wrong, Dom can kind of rub me the wrong ways, but at the same time, he's so confident in his intelligence that when he says something like that, there is zero remorse or anything like that. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm here for it. Dom, you just continue to think you're the smartest person in the room and say stupid things like that. I am totally here for it. Let's keep him on the commentary team.
It was outstanding. Like my knock with him when he first moved to the desk was just that he was so salty and so dour all the time that I was like, you are the smartest guy at the table, but you make me like MMA less.
Yeah.
He's loosened up a little bit from that, but now he's wrong a lot. So we just can't win.
Yeah. And he tried to make a joke. I can't remember what the joke was, but it just came across so unnaturally. And Bisping has a fake laugh with it. It was, yeah. I mean, the saltiness is gone, but the mistakes I'm actually kind of here for. You get people complaining about Joe Rogan's mistakes or whatever, but it's Joe Rogan. The UFC is never going to cut him loose because even if he is making mistakes with his commentary, he's an asset because of that name. So Joe Rogan's not going
because
anywhere.
Of that name. He and Bruce Buffer are the biggest stars at most cards that they cover.
So it would be stupid to get rid of him, even if he is making mistakes.
Yeah, I mean it's like when Herb Dean goes over and refs a card in Russia or something, and the fighters are all asking him for his autograph. Yep. Give this card a letter grade. You've watched the show enough times to know that obviously we grade a free card differently than one that they're asking you to shell at $70 or $80 up for. But give this card a letter grade.
I'm going to say a B. It met expectations. In some ways it exceeded them. There were a couple that were blah, but there wasn't anything that was terrible, so to speak, either. Probably the worst fight on the card was the Dolgarian Marat fight, and that's just because it was just so flippant dominate. So I say a B.
I don't hate that. I'm thinking a B as well. On paper, on paper, 90% of Apex cards are just another card, but this one, it delivered. We learned some things in the top fight. There was a little bit of controversy, but it was a ways down the card, and I don't think it affected that much. It sounds like a good solid B to me as well. The gallery, not liking it quite as well. Pope gives it a C. I mean, the Pope speaks for God. Iman Report speaks for probably many fans in saying C+. Portia Baines is just dunking because, on the internet, you can dunk even if you're 4'3". So Portia's all over it. Boz, C+ for Yanal, damn Ashmos. I wouldn't think of Yanal Ashmos as a divisive figure, but everyone in the chat either hates him or loves him. Not many fighters with 2 fights in the UFC have that kind of gravitas, like emotionally. So that's
maybe they
impressive
just
stuff.
wanted Pink to knock his ass out. I don't know. Maybe that's what they were expecting and he didn't do it. So yeah,
Maybe.
let's get pissed at the guy for not going to sleep.
And last, most difficult question: who's your listener of the night? You get to pick one.
Ooh, I'm actually leaning towards Portia.
You know what? Portia is this close to being like disqualified, like she moving on to the Hall of Fame, kind of like, you know, when you won on Jeopardy 5 times in a row, they kicked you off the show, and like she's getting up there. But it is good to have her back. She missed a couple weeks there. Must be something
Yeah.
weird
No,
happening.
I know that I've seen her on there before. But yeah, hadn't seen her for a little bit, so I figured throw her back on there. You know, but like you said, there's Pope, Marcus, those guys I see on there quite a bit. So I had to hold off on them, even though fantastic contributors, and we can't ever do Dev. So
yeah, can't do Dev. And I believe I said that you weren't allowed, you know, when I saw you in the comment section back in the day. I am going to say welcome again to Andrade. Thanks for hanging out with us. And I'm going to give it tonight. It's between Iman reports and Tiga. And because Keith isn't here to hold me down to one pick, I'm going to declare it co-winners. So there are my listeners of the night. That is it. 12 fights in the books. UFC Fight Night 242, Burns versus Brady, also known as UFC Vegas 97. Of course, next up, next Saturday, we have Noche UFC, which the UFC promises us will be the greatest spectacle in sports history, let alone combat sports history. That will remain to be seen, but it is a pretty damn good card in its own right. And watch for that preview to be up on Sherdog first thing Monday morning. Or if you're like some of these people in the chat right now, you know that it goes up at like 2 a.m. as soon as I'm done producing it. So be on the lookout for that. Should be a really fun preview. Thank you all for being in the chat. Thank you for being so good to each other, so good to us, teaching me a few things, making me laugh. Thank you to Dayne for stepping up for Keith. It's good to have you in the rotation, dude. This will not be the last time. We will rope you in for more of these, and you know, probably rope you in for some previews as well if you're game.
I would absolutely love that. You know, at this point, I think that yourself and Keith have the best chemistry of any regular post show or preview show. So anything that I can do to contribute to that, I greatly appreciate it.
Replace Keith. Kidding. All right, everybody. Good night.
You're gonna have the chat pissed off at me. They don't want that. Trust me.